Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Songwriting Simplified with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk. I hope you are all doing very well and have had a great start to your week. And now that we are at the middle of the week, I think everybody calls this hump day. So because it's the hump of the week, it's the middle of the week. So I hope everybody is having a good one. I've been actually off work this week. I'm off all week until Tuesday, so I'm enjoying some much needed downtime after a lot of the chaos that's been going on the last maybe 2, maybe 3 months. It's been a little bit stressful, a little bit chaotic, but so I needed basically to take up some time off. So I decided I'd do it this week for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's my daughter's 16th birthday this week, and we needed to get a lot of things ready for that. So birthday today, actually. Plus, for those of you that don't know, and you know, maybe you all don't even care, it's okay. My daughter has also been signed to a USA soccer scholarship program, which is very exciting for her. It's what she's always wanted to do. She's always wanted to have an opportunity to potentially go and play professional football. And so that would mean if she gets a full scholarship, she would be away to an American university where she would study. And she's hoping to study music production because she loves mixing. So she's hoping to go there and do that whilst also doing a lot of training, a lot of development as an elite professional athlete, and getting involved in soccer programs at universities and that kind of thing. And hopefully that will open up opportunities for her to have a shot at a professional career as a footballer. So she's very excited about that. We're very excited about that. It's a big thing for her. It's massive. So we'll see kind of where it goes basically over the course of the next few years. So she won't actually go to the United States until 2027 because she's got exams and things to complete here in Scotland. So you know, there's kind of a decent distance to go before she actually gets to go to America. So yeah, it's kind of all quite exciting. And so we'll have to see where it goes. She has to start all sorts of, she has to follow a new nutritional program. She has to do a lot of extended training, and she has personalized coaching as well. So to improve her skills and develop her stamina and her conditioning and all of that. So that's going to be very exciting for her to get involved in. It'll make her work very hard physically, as well as working equally hard academically to make sure she gets all the qualifications required to be able to get a full scholarship. So yeah, exciting things are going on here in the Lipsham family. So now that I've kind of got that out of the way, let's see who we got here. We got Sean Aaron was the first in the door, beating Billy by 20 minutes, which is amazing that anybody actually beats Billy to being first in the door. But Sean Aaron managed to do it. Well done him. Tony Stringer is here. We got Kyle. We got Dwayne. We got Dave. We got Brett. We've got Don Oliver. We've got the repairman, who is Mr. Awesome. And we've got Just Bob. And so far, that is all we have so far. We've only got like 12 people here. So for those of you that don't know, but pretty much everybody here who is in the chat, which includes my friend Keith, who has just come in. For those of you that don't know, maybe you're watching, you're not subscribed to the channel yet, so you're not in the chat, but you're just watching. If you are watching and you're brand new, this show is basically all about songwriting and everything that goes with that. So we talk about melody writing, we talk about harmony parts, we talk about writing for horn sections, writing for string sections, we talk about arranging, we talk about composing, and we talk about music theory and all of that, because music theory has a part to play in how we write our songs, whether we're familiar with music theory or not. So one of the things I do is I help equip you with some music theory knowledge that you can apply to your own songwriting straight away. And sometimes we go into the complex, but most of the time we stay in the kind of simple area. The reason being is that I like to try and take complicated concepts and break them down and make them simple and easy for you to digest. So we've talked about things like tritonal substitutions, and we've talked about all sorts of chord progressions like 251s, backdoor 251s. We've talked about Coltrane changes a little bit, although that's kind of really advanced stuff. But my job here really is to take those complicated things and make them simple so that you can actually begin to apply them to your music yourself. Hence the title, Songwriting Simplified. For those of you who don't know the background to this show, this started as a two-man show with Jonny Gibe. We started it way back, I think, in 2017 over on his now defunct channel. And then Jonny's life got a little bit complicated and it got a little bit too busy and he didn't really have the time available to do the show anymore. So I took over the show myself, and we've been doing this now for about 3 or 4 years on my own, which I don't mind. I have had a few guests on here as well. We've had Joe Gilder on. I am still working on trying to get him back on the show, where we can talk some more songwriting concepts and things like that. And we've had Rich Cresswell on here a fair few times, not just to launch our challenges, our songwriting challenges that we've done twice a year for the last 3 years, but also have him on the show to talk about composing as a composer for things like video games and sync licensing for TV and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what this show is all about for those of you that don't know. And I just thought it'd be valuable to basically overview why I do what I do on a Wednesday at midnight. That's why. Basically to educate you guys and provide you with skills and concepts that you can then apply to your own songwriting. And then, of course, the idea then is that you can apply all of these things to the songwriting challenges that we do a couple of times a year. So, and, you know, helping you to find new things in music that you had not previously found, and then you can make those your own. One of the things that has really helped me over the years as a composer, as an arranger, as a songwriter, is when somebody opens up something to me that I didn't know about before, or I didn't even know existed before. And so one of those things for me was tritonal substitution. The whole idea of substituting a chord that is 3 whole tones away for another chord. Kind of like in soccer, when you do substitution, you substitute one player for another player, and the player that you're taking off needs to have something in common with the player that you're bringing on, so that they can do similar functions and maintain the cohesiveness of the team on the pitch. So that was one of the things that really opened up harmony for me in a way that I had never discovered before. And I found a whole new harmonic world when I started doing tritone substitutions. And then I realized actually that you can substitute pretty much any chord for any other chord. It just needs to have some common things that bind these two chords together, the chord itself and the substitute. They need to have at least one thing in common. So in the case of tritone substitutions, they need to have 2. They need to have the root and the third, the major third or the minor third. Those kind of things need to be in common. They may function in a different way, but they need to be the two tones that are in common between the two chords in order for them to work really well. So I thought that we would talk a little bit about tritonal substitution again. I know we've covered it extensively in the past before, but I figured, why don't we talk about it a little bit more? And maybe we talk about ways in which it's not a good idea to use tritonal substitution. Because whilst technically, yes, it can apply to pretty much any chord, there are certain things that you need to think about. And of course, the most important thing you need to think about is the melody. Does the chord substitution actually help or hinder the melody? Because if it hinders the melody, then it's not going to work. Even though technically, harmonically, it would work. If it doesn't support the melody, there's no point in doing it. So when to use it, when to not use it, and also how to not overuse it, having discovered it, which is what I did to start with. It was something I discovered, and I was just like, I'm just going to do this all the time. And I did. And unfortunately, it made my songs sound weaker for it because I was just doing it too much. And so the real secret to things like tritonal substitution and backdoor 251s and things like that is to use them sparingly and subtly, and use them at the right point that's going to support your melody. Because melody is king, lyrics are king. So everything else should support and uphold the melody and make the melody shine, make the lyrics shine. Particularly if your lyric is going to, you are seeking to invoke an emotional response from the listener, and you want to tug at their heartstrings a little bit. Harmony can do a great job at that. Tritonal substitution can do a great job at that. Also, interrupted cadences and things like that can do a real great job at providing that emotional link to your lyrics that can really tug at the heartstrings of your listener and get your listener really committed to that particular lyric, which can be the difference between them really holding on to your song for a long time or just letting it go over time. Ideally, for your song to be successful, you want people to be singing it not just straight away after having heard it, but you want people to be singing your song for years. And even, 20, 30 years later to still be able to remember your song. Even if all they remember is the chorus or the hook line of your song. So these things are really important. They are devices with which you can color your music, but they are also devices with which you need to support the melody of your music. It's the same reason why you have a horn section in a song or strings in a song, is because you want to use those tone colors, those palettes, to provide some ear candy, but also because you want to emotionally connect with your listener. So a good horn section is a really, really good thing. For me, one of the best horn section charts has got to be the horn section in Steely Dan's Deacon Blues. The reason being is because that song is kind of emotive. It's Donald Fagen and Walter Becker basically celebrating loserdom in a hilarious way, but the horn section is designed to support the melody in a really, really cool way. There's nothing very sophisticated about it. There's a couple of nice little hook lines, but for the most part, the horns, the saxophones are just playing sustained chords with a couple of little phrases here and there on, flugelhorns and trumpets. But for the most part, the saxophones are just playing a bed, which provides a particular color that supports the melody for this particular song. And of course, the hook line is at the beginning of the chorus is learn to work the saxophone. I'll play just what I feel. So it's great that there's a horn section dominated by David Sanborn's alto, and then Tom Scott's tenor and Michael Brecker's tenor as well. Plus you've got Ronnie, I think it's Ronnie Kuber on tuba, and you've got, I've forgotten the person playing baritone saxophone as well. So you've got like all of that making this nice little bed that supports the melody. And, you know, a sax line, a key little saxophone section line that supports that chorus. Learn to work the saxophone. And then you've got Tom Scott's really, really, really good solo. And no, there's not really actually that many tritonal substitutions in that song. But these are kind of the things we talk about. So, tritonal substitution is a great, great, great concept to use. It's where you can substitute one chord for another dominant chord. So, just very quickly to go over it for those of you that have never heard of it before, and I am going to get to your questions, don't worry. Let's say we are going to do a 5-1 in C major. So here's our C major chord. We're going to go G7. So we're going to do this nice little ending, which either ends our song altogether or just ends that particular section. So but we can replace this G7 chord, which is chord 5 in the key of C, with a chord that is 3 whole tones away. So 3 whole tones. How do we find that? So we go G, A, B, up another whole tone there, and we get to D flat major. And so, as I said before, the most important notes in a chord, particularly a dominant chord, which is what this is, we need the 3rd and the 7th and the root. And also, as I said before, a really, really good substitute has at least one tone in common with the chord that it's replacing. So in the case of a tritone substitution, to make it really, really work, you need the 7th and the 3rd of your dominant chord, which is your original chord, and then you go up three steps, and we use the same 2 notes because they belong to the same chord. They just function in a different way. So in a G chord, the F is the 7th and the B is the 3rd, the major 3rd. If I take the root and put it up on D flat, now the F is the 3rd and the B, or C flat in this case, is the 7th. So their roles have reversed. But because of that, they can resolve in the same way. So this tritone resolves that way. Okay? So see how the D flat 7 chord does exactly the same job. It just provides a little bit of extra spice, just a hair of spice, not a lot, just a hair of spice to a 7th chord, to a dominant chord, to a chord 5 going to chord 1. Now, you can do this in other contexts, not just in a chord 5 going to chord 1. There's a whole bunch of ways, and I will get to some of those other examples in just a minute. So, all right, so you see how that works. So if I do a 2-5-1 conventionally, and then I'll use the D flat chord to replace the G7. And you see how it does exactly the same job. Okay, and you can extend that, and you can keep going down in half steps in the bass. You can go. And you've ended up back where you started, back in C major again. So that's one application. So and all I've done is just walk the bass down in half steps, and I've gone D minor, D flat 7, C major 7, B7 sharp, B7 augmented, sharp 5, if you want to call it. And that's substitute for F7, going to B flat major, A7 sharp 5, substituting for E flat 7, taking me to A flat major, and then a conventional 5 to 1. And that's basically a series of 5 ones, with the 5 being a tritonal substitution every time. So let's start with the first one. We've got D minor, D flat, substituting for G7, C major, and then I do the B7 sharp 5, which substitutes for F7 if I just play F7 instead. You see how that works? A7 sharp 5. Substituting for E flat 7. Takes me to A flat major. And then G7 back to C major 7. So there's a whole bunch of applications there where I'm just doing a sequence of 5-1, 5-1, 5-1 with a tritonal substitution each time. And what you find is there's natural voice leading that makes that sound not only exquisite, but makes it sound simple when actually it's pretty complex. But it sounds simple. And so you can end up with something that actually sounds really, really cool, sounds sophisticated, sounds funky, and is not just a jazz thing. This is the kind of chord changes that you'll find in pop songs, modern, contemporary, 21st century pop songs. You'll find tritonal substitutions turning up all over pop songs, all over R&B songs, especially R&B songs. You find it all the time. Slow burn, slow jam, R&B songs, tritonal substitutions all over the place. And then it's just a case of decorating your harmony to make it pretty, and making sure that those things don't get in the way of the melody. So that's tritonal substitution. Really, really cool. I could talk at length about tritonal substitution. When I've been a lecturer at university, I've done like whole 3-hour lectures on unpacking tritonal substitution, how it works, different applications. And I've tried to basically just distill that down into about 10 minutes there. But yes, there have been books written on the subject, lots of books written on the subject. So if you want to dive deeper into tritonal substitution, how you can apply them in different ways, then let me know and I can cover some of them. Because, the one I've just shown is not necessarily just the only way that they can be applied. You can imply them. So even if your rhythm section isn't playing them, if you are an improvising soloist, you can use the chord tones from those tritone substitutions, even if the band isn't actually playing them. What that will do. So if my band is playing G7 to C, I might want to play the D flat 7 notes to get me back onto C. So I might do something like this. Okay. So even if it's not actually technically being played by your rhythm section, you can certainly imply it by borrowing from it. And it's something that the really great improvisers do all the time. They borrow from other chords by way of getting from one chord to another. All right, so at this point, I will dive into some questions. We can go back to tritone subs if you have some questions on it. Brett says, would be nice to have Gregor on as well for those of us who may or may not be interested in writing electronic music. That's a great little suggestion as well. I will talk to Gregor and see if he's up for it. The other person that I want to get on here is Lucas Ryszczyka, who is a fellow jazz guy like me, but he also does a whole bunch of other things as well. He's well versed in, orchestral music, so it'd be great to have him on here as a composer and talking about using his harmony wizard and using his scoring tools in Studio One, and how anybody can use them in Studio One for songwriting, for arranging, and for composing as well. It doesn't have to be orchestral stuff, but the scoring tools are really, really helpful for that. So I would like to get him on here to talk about that. Let's see. Dave says, I just found out about Neapolitan chords. Interesting yet weird. Neapolitan chords are fun. And they are actually a little bit related to tritonal chords, actually. Let me show you an example of how the Neapolitan thing is related. There's this cadence that is called the Neapolitan 6, and you may have heard this in some TV theme tunes because it does come up a lot. So again, sticking with C major, this chord here, which is, again, it's that D flat chord, but with the third in the bass. So basically, instead of doing 2-5-1, you do flat 2 over 3, 5-1, and you'll hear this in Beethoven's music a lot. It was one of the harmonic devices that Mozart introduced to classical music towards the end of his life. If you want to check out a really good deep dive into the harmonic writing of late Mozart, then Charles Cornell did a really, really good deep dive into one of his late piano sonatas that he did not actually complete. Unfortunately, he died before he had the chance to complete it, but he wrote it in like 1786, I think it was, and it is replete with wildly chromatic harmony for the period. And we're talking about the classical period. I mean, I know everybody, when you think of orchestral music and operas and things, everybody broadly calls that classical music. Technically, when I speak of classical music, I'm talking about the music that is after the Baroque period and before the Romantic period. So it's the period in which Haydn and Mozart and early Beethoven lives. Those were the big guys of music at the time. Mozart was probably the biggest composer of the classical period because he provided a whole bunch of innovations that we now take for granted, like the whole concept of the symphony, a virtuoso work for the entire orchestra, the symphony. He basically took that that framework, that composing framework, and expanded it massively. Under Mozart, the orchestra also grew significantly. Things like French horns were introduced to the orchestra for the first time because of Mozart. Mozart made a lot of use of woodwinds like oboes and clarinets, particularly oboes, and other double-reeded instruments like bassoons were really kind of not really in favor, even though the bassoon had existed since the Baroque period. It was actually a Baroque instrument. It fell out of favor a bit and then started to come back in again thanks to Mozart. Mozart's use of how he wrote for woodwinds like oboes, clarinets, and bassoons and things like that, they were a signature of his orchestral work. If you listen to his orchestral work, you will hear, you know, kind of if the violins are playing a melody with the melody harmonized by violas, you'll hear this woodwind thing going on. The chords being played by woodwinds, and then you'll have that being answered by French horns. That's a classic device of Mozart. That had never been done before. So the whole thing of the Neapolitan cadence, which is called the Neapolitan Sixth, which is what I just played for you there, that was a harmonic device that I think Haydn had started playing with, and then Mozart basically took it to the next level, and it became a really, really brilliant way to really emphasize a perfect cadence by basically substituting chord 2, the in the key of C, the D minor chord, with the D flat chord with the third in the bass. And it's a really fascinating substitution because it's not like the tritone substitution. It's kind of a bit like it, but it's not completely. The one thing it does have in common, if we take that D minor chord, there's our common tone. D minor has the F, D flat 7 has the F, okay? So there is the one common tone that is requisite for a substitute chord. So this Neapolitan thing, the reason why it works is because there is a common tone, and then when you get to the G7, you've still got that note hanging there. So it provides a ton of tension. It allows the F to become really, really quite emphasized, and a really strong tension note that then becomes resolved. Much more so. I mean, that's fairly, that's fairly tense, but if we do and do that little suspension. So it's still there even when we are on the home chord, and then we resolve it to the major third. So it provides a lot of drama. So this is one of the ways in which Mozart used that little Neapolitan chord that Dave is talking about, is it provides tension. So if you've got a moment in the lyric of, say, an opera, you've got your main protagonist who is singing, and they are singing a particularly dramatic line with a particularly dramatic, very tense lyric, then that can be a great little way of highlighting that tension. Okay, so that's one of the ways in which you can have a tritonal substitution, which kind of that is, but it's also kind of classical as well. We're not dealing with the D flat chord as a seventh chord. We're dealing with it as a regular triad but in first inversion with the third in the bass. But we're not using it as a replacement for G7. We're still playing the G7. So for example, if I try doing and then try doing the tritone as well, kind of it falls apart. There's too much going on. So it doesn't really work if you try to use the Neapolitan and the tritonal substitution at the same time. It doesn't really work. It actually weakens that whole harmonic idea. So Neapolitan chords are great. I love Neapolitan chords. Keith says, I supported Melody once. She was great. That's hilarious. Brett says, you're flip-flopping the tritones in the dominant 7 chords. Yeah, because, you know, it's like those two notes can serve entirely different purposes, but they still do the same tension and the same resolution. It's just with a different bass note, these two notes now have a different context. So, or, right, the result is the exact same. The two notes just now have a different kind of tension when you're on the flat 2 going to 1 instead of 5 going to 1. So it can be a lot of fun to do this. Like I said, if you're an improviser, you can actually do the tritone substitution just with your with how you develop your lines, even if the band aren't actually playing them. That in itself can provide a whole bunch of tension. And then Dave says, wow, I actually understand this epiphany moment. Well, that's really great. That's what I like to hear. That's the whole point of this show, is for you guys to go, so this really complicated thing isn't actually that complicated at all, and I can actually go away and do this. Yes, that's the whole point. So Dave has just kind of made the whole point for this show. And he says, that's what I was thinking in the jazz bassist. The bassist, they can create a tritone feel and create that pepper. Yeah, bass players can do it with their walking patterns as well. But again, if as speaking as a bass player of, you know, probably the better part of, 40 years of playing experience on the bass, if you're playing a walking line, yes, you can do the tritonal substitution, even if nobody else is doing it. You just got to be careful to make sure that the notes you play are supporting the chord that's being played, even if it's not the same as yours. Even if you're playing the D flat 7 and they're playing the G7, if you're playing that D flat 7, you got to make sure that the notes, the chord tones that you are selecting work and that they resolve to the tonic, the home bass chord, the C chord, or whatever key you happen to be in. So as a bass player, it's all about making sure that the root falls on beat 1, unless you're Paul Chambers, in which case sometimes you will delay the root to beat 3. I've heard him do that. And that can really work very, very well. Basically not do the root note until you hit beat 3 of the chord, of the bar. But otherwise, for the most part, the root is on beat 1, and then you want to have chord tones and passing tones on all the other beats in the bar, the other 3 beats in the bar. And this is where you can do stepwise motion, walking up, or you can do, chromatic approaches. So a chromatic approach or a chromatic enclosure to get to the root of the next chord. So for example, if I want to go from C major here to F, I could do a little chromatic enclosure here. The G flat going to F. And then from F, I can walk up diatonically, or I can walk up chromatically. Right, so I could go So I'm using a mixture there of diatonic movements and chromatic movements to get from one chord to the next. And I'm hitting the root of each chord on beat 1. So yeah, bass players can actually hint at a little bit of tritonal substitution as well, definitely. And it is something that I use a lot when I'm doing a walking pattern quite a bit. And sometimes I'll use quite extensive chromatic notes because I like a lot of tension in my walking patterns. I don't like to just stick to chord, that's fine if you're in the 1930s in a Glenn Miller band. Yep, that's fine. That's fairly diatonic. That's just basically C6 to F6. That's fine. But, I like to do things a little bit more chromatic, like that. That's typically how I do my bass lines. Not many people do that. Some do. Some have a lot of chromatic playing in their lines, and some don't. Some prefer to move diatonically between chords. I prefer to do chromatics. Sometimes I'll even do a proper substitution using 1 and 5 of each chord. Like that, or I'll do so I'll do that sometimes. I'll insert a chord that isn't necessarily there as a passing chord. Sometimes, like when a bass does pedal points. Okay, pedal points are not really the same thing as tritonal substitutions, but pedal points are really useful. If you don't know what a pedal point is where typically you have a bass note and the chords changing over the top, but the bass note is static, it doesn't move. So, for example, so I did a couple of bass pedal points there where I did. All right, so pedal points are really, really powerful if you want to build a lot of tension. And you'll see pedal points pop up at improv nights all the time, mostly because the bass player wants a bit of a rest from doing lots of notes, especially if they're walking at high tempo. If you're doing that for 20 minutes, you may want to do a little pedal point by way of a breather, and that also gives the other musicians a chance to kind of just explore some extra chromatic harmony, just to really ratchet up that tension more and more and more, and then you release it. So pedal points are really, really powerful. And you can just superimpose all sorts of different chords that just don't belong to the key that you're in on top of those pedal points, and they're great. You can also use them in modal music. If you want some really good examples of this, then McCoy Tyner, one of my piano heroes, he was in the first great John Coltrane quartet with Elvin Jones, Jimmy Garrison, and Coltrane, when they did the Impressions album. And Impressions itself is a great tune, being that it's based on two Mixolydian scales. It's based on G Mixolydian and A flat Mixolydian, and basically that's kind of how that works. But McCoy Tyner frequently does this with his left hand. And all the while that he's doing that, he's improvising over the top. And this is not an impression of him at all, because I could not even come remotely close to McCoy's technical prowess on the piano. But essentially something like this. So that kind of thing. So that's another way in which you can use pedal points, where you're just playing, you're hammering out the 1 and the 5 of the chord down at the bottom of the keyboard, and it can be very, very powerful. So a bunch of devices that we've talked about there that can be really, really useful for you guys to extend your harmonic palette, to be able to increase tension and make a way in which you can draw the listener into your music more and more and more, and get them to really, really engage with your melody, so that you know, the melody isn't a passive thing that they listen to, but it's an active thing that they engage with. And things like these harmonic devices can really, really help support a really well thought through melody. So, but again, you got to be careful. For example, if you use a tritone substitution where the melody doesn't work because the melody is still diatonic, you can end up tripping yourself up. And for example, if the melody to finish a particular phrase does this, basically just a walk down from G to the C to the tonic. Now, there are lots of ways in which you can harmonize this. You know, you can go, which is nice. I've done the 4-5-1 instead of 2-5-1, but I could do 2-5-1. That's easy enough to do. Yep. So if I was to do a tritonal substitution here, it would not work. So if I go D minor, doesn't work. I mean, it kind of does. It turns that into a D7 sharp 9 chord, but it doesn't kind of really work that well. It kind of works, but it may be, depending upon the context in which you are writing, that could be too crunchy, too spicy, too much dissonance. Again, it depends upon what you're doing, the context of what you're working in. So be careful where you use them, especially if you want to avoid having to change the melody note. So in that particular case, to make it work, I would have to change the melody note from here. You'd have to go, or, which weakens the melody line. You know, that's a really strong melody line. Kind of suggests a different mood. It's maybe not as strident as "This is how I end," or "This is how I end." It might not work for the context in which you're writing to change the melody like that, you know? Context is king here. So where you use a tritonal substitution, don't just do it for the sake of doing it because you can do it. Make sure it fits the context of your melody and your lyrics. If it doesn't, it's just going to distract the listener altogether. And the listener's going to go, "Oh, chord I was not expecting." And they've forgotten about the lyric. They've forgotten about the melody. And so the point of your song is lost and the listener is distracted by something. You don't want that. You want the tritonal substitution to support the melody, to emphasize the melody, to emphasize the lyric, and yet also at the same time make the listener go, "Oh, that's nice." That's what you want. All right, so let's see. Jimmy Smith comes to mind. Jimmy Smith was one of the finest Hammond organ players, influenced a whole bunch of Hammond organ players, including Steve Winwood, Joey DiFrancesco. I can never remember how to pronounce his last name correctly. Sadly died, I think last year. One of the great Hammond organ players. He was very young, unfortunately. He was probably mid-40s when he died. I don't think he was very old. I think he was younger than me when he died. There's a whole bunch of reasons I could go into as to probably what caused his death, not least the fact that he was massively overweight. He was incredibly obese, and that probably had a lot to do with why he had a massive heart attack and died. But one of the great Hammond organ players of our time, Jimmy Smith had a profound impact also upon Corey Henry, who is another Hammond organ genius. If you've ever heard any of the stuff that he has done in the past with Snarky Puppy and now also with the Funk Apostles, you should check out all of his work. He is a fabulous piano player. He is a fabulous Hammond organ player. He's just an all-round musical genius. To be really honest, but there's a guy who really knows how to use chromatic harmony and substitute chords to really create beautiful music and harmony that supports the melody fantastically well. Organ pedaling. Yeah, I mean, people like Joey DiFrancesco. He would play in groups with people like John Scofield on guitar or Pat Metheny, but mostly John Scofield on guitar, Dennis Chambers on drums. And he would be, when he's improvising, he'd be playing chords on the lower manual with his left hand, and he'd be playing the bass pedals to create beautiful, amazing bass parts. I mean, I've sat at a Hammond organ and tried to do that. It is so hard because you can't see your feet. You can't see what you're doing with your feet on the pedals. You just have to learn the pedal board so you know where you're going with your feet. It's incredibly complicated to do. And then to chord with your left hand and improvise a melody with your right hand and do all of those three things at the same time. So yeah. Awesome playing. Let's see. Oh, he also played with Steve Gadd. I saw Joey DeFrancescino at Ronnie Scott's years ago, maybe 1998, with Steve Gadd on drums and Bill Evans on tenor saxophone. And that was awesome. What a night that was, because they played blues, they played R&B, they played funk, they played bebop. It was a wonderful, glorious night. And the Hammond organ just sounded like a bass player and an organist. It was extraordinary. They didn't need a bass player. All right, so I think we will call it there, because it is now 1 a.m. here, and I've had a long day. I've been at a parents' evening tonight at my daughter's school, talking to her teachers, and so it's been a busy night. Plus, we've also had her birthday celebration here as well. So it's been a busy night, and I'm very eager to get to bed. So we'll call it there. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here and for your questions. I appreciate it a lot. We'll be back here on Sunday. And on Sunday, I am hoping to have Rich on the show, and we will unveil the 2025 Christmas Songwriting Challenge. So if you are interested in that, yes, Sunday Night Live is not normally a songwriting show, but if you are interested in taking part in the Christmas Songwriting Challenge for 2025, be back here 6 p.m. Central Time on Sunday. And if you know anybody else that you think would be a good fit for that particular challenge, plus they use Studio One and they want to ask Studio One questions, get them over here, get them subscribed to the channel, and we'll have a blast of a night unveiling that challenge. And I'll take, as usual, I'll take your Studio One questions as well. All right, folks, until then, I bid you a very good night. Good night.